All right, AP World History students, welcome to the Silk Road Lecture Part 2. And last time we stopped off talking about the idea of the spread of all the things, now that we've done the simulation, besides the actual physical goods and the valuable items. We talked about the spread of religion. Now we'll move on to the spread of epidemic disease, which is something very real, because now for one of the first times in world history, we have this massive exchange network and people moving intercontinentally through a large portion of the world. Okay, and the trade routes were monumental in spreading different pathogens. Obviously, there's a limited idea of what those things were, but bubonic plague, and this is this is before the plague breaks out in Europe that kills, 1/4 to a third of the people. But smallpox, measles, and disease, the impact that the College Board may be looking for with it is just more than the idea of just, oh, people died, but the idea that it is economically negative to have any kind of a devastating disease because it cuts productivity of people. Here are some of the epidemics in Han and in the Han Dynasty and Roman empires, and you can kind of see that there's a steady decrease of people between 200 and 600 in the Han Dynasty, and between 0 and 400 in the Roman empires, and that really shows us some pretty important numbers of decline, probably due to epidemic, large portion due to epidemic, and these epidemics due to being spread and being brought into large masses of people. Okay, the Han Dynasty, okay, is something else that's mentioned in chapter 12 for you. And the Han were a very powerful state. They're often compared to the Romans because they were around during the same time. And a lot of epidemics caused, along with land distribution, a lot of rebellions. And this was a couple of the things that led to the decline of the Han state, even though they were gaining wealth via the Silk Road. So you can see here, China after the Han Dynasty is separated into three factions: the Wei, who are in purple, the Wu, and the Shu. The Wu in green, and the Shu in the orange in the western part of China. Generals assume authority, and these three kingdoms replace the Han Dynasty in about 200 CE. However, the Silk Road is still thriving because, as we found out in our simulation, everybody is making a profit. Okay, Sinicization of nomadic people. Okay, social and cultural changes to the Chinese way of life are a direct result of the spread of culture along the Silk Road. There is intermarriage between nomadic people and the Chinese, really nomadic people and travelers and all groups along the Silk Road, and the adaptation of agricultural products, namely the spread of things like rice. Okay, Buddhism and Taoism find popularity. Buddhism, as it's kind of being forced out of India by Hinduism, and Taoism because its ideas and the way that it blended with nature. Okay. Fall of the Roman Empire, which we also get to in this cultural exchange along the Silk Road. There are a lot of reasons that were given for the fall of the Roman Empire. Some of those reasons include epidemics. There is one historical theory about lead poisoning, massive lead poisoning due to the pipes and the infrastructure in Rome itself and some of the other major cities that they created public works in. The economy becoming more and more regionalized, and then poor government infrastructure and systems. There's also a theory dealing with the idea that Christianity becoming the official religion softened Roman soldiers and makes the empire much more susceptible to foreign invaders. Diocletian, okay, is a ruler from 284 to 305, Common Era. Divided the empire into 2 administrative districts and tries to reform. Diocletian dies and civil war follows, and then we move on to Constantine, Emperor Constantine. And Constantine is probably more important to remember than Diocletian. Constantine was a pretty significant ruler in the decline, or moving toward the decline of the Roman Empire. Now, when we say decline, realize that we're saying that the Roman Empire as we know it in history, or historians have marked it, is going to decline. Rome is going to live, and the ideas of Rome and the spread of Roman culture are going to live on, well, forever, okay, as evidenced by all of the things that we've talked about in class today. Okay, the Visigoths, one of my favorite names to say, influenced by Roman law and Christianity, were formerly a buffer state, but they are from the north, and the Huns, okay, and there are a few groups of Huns. They're Germanic empires, and Rome is sacked officially in about 410, okay. A German emperor becomes the ruler in 476, and we start to move forward with this split of the Roman Empire. Okay, here's a little drawing depicting the conquest of Rome. Romulus Augustus, the last of the Western Roman emperors. The German army commander, Adavasser. Okay. Little reading there about Odoacer. And when we talk about the West and the East, this is going to be a very important divide for several reasons. Religiously, it's going to split the Catholic or the Christian Church. And the end result is we're going to have this Holy Roman Empire, which we'll further explore in upcoming chapters. And it's going to have the Byzantine Empire, which we'll also dive into as the Eastern Empire that was fairly significant and is oftentimes overlooked. Okay? So as the Roman Empire is following and losing stability, and you can see the darkly outlined area, and in the 450s, they're still, the Roman Empire was still pretty intact, but you can see all of the different groups of invaders. The Hun, they've all got great names: the Huns and the Visigoths, the Franks, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Lombards, the Angles, and the Saxons. All groups of people originating from the north and from the east that are moving in and taking chunks in various parts of the Roman Empire and dissecting it. Okay? Here are some things. I'm not going to go through these. These are pretty straightforward as far as a simple way to organize the causes and the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Cultural change. The growth of Christianity due to Constantine. Okay, the Edict of Milan is something that's somewhat significant. It allows Christian practice and allows converts to Christianity in the Roman Empire. And then 380, Theodosius proclaims Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. Now, sometimes that's 380, and sometimes it's 391 or 392 based on the decrees that were sent out. Okay, so in the latter half, okay, of the 4th century is basically when you need to narrow that down to. Okay, and then we start getting to some of the important saints that still play a role in Christian theology today. Okay, and one of those is St. Augustine, and you'll find that Christianity has a lot of influences, as we should not be surprised after our simulation that they're all it's the world is much more complex than the cookie cutter that we often try to compartmentalize it in. There was Greek thought, there was Manichaeism, there's, soon to be Islamic thought, there's Zoroastrianism, there are Chinese philosophies, all kinds of things that theologists are dealing with at this point, and influences that are combining themselves and working through Christianity and other major religions. So, the church in the latter half of chapter 12 is talked about, and this is the actual doctrine and practice of the early church. And as Christianity is established in Rome, now there need to be these religious institutions where people come to worship, and this is where the kind of the institution that we still know today as this building that we go to worship in, and the organization of that building and the doctrine of that building really start to develop in the sunset of the Roman Empire. You can kind of see here that what I talked about before. As the Roman Empire falls, there are territories in orange that are kind of held on to in the West, and those will expand into Central and Northern and Western Europe. And then the Byzantine Empire, which will include most of Greece and modern-day Turkey, down through modern-day Israel and Jordan and Syria and Lebanon, and into Egypt. And that concludes chapter 12 on the Silk Road. Next up, we'll be talking about the expansive realm of Islam.